Hey guys, so this is a recap of one of our last weeks of the Transformed series. And this week we're talking about how God can transform our relationships, right? Knowing who God is and having that relationship with Him informs and transforms every relationship that we have, right? When we understand how deeply God loves us and what He has done for us, what He's sacrificed for us, and when Jesus says, no one has a greater love than this, than they lay down their life for their friends. And Jesus was talking to His disciples saying, I'm your friend. I'm God here in flesh, on earth, and I'm giving up my life for you. And that's a real friend, right? Someone who goes the distance, who pays the price for you, who sacrifices for you. We all want friends like that, right? We want friends we can trust. We want friends that aren't going to lead us into or pressure us into trying to make bad decisions, right? We want friends that are going to push us to do better, right? We want good friends, but one thing I want us to think about is we need to be those kind of people ourselves, right? We want to have good friends, but some of us don't put in the work sometimes to be good friends, right? It's hard, right? So there are three Bible verses we're going to look at today that I think will help us understand how to be those people who are good friends. And it's kind of in the light of what God has called us to be as people in general. But if we apply these to our relationships, we're going to have some good friendships. The first one is from Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24. It says, let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. Right? That's one of the cool reasons that we meet together as a church. It's to join together and worship God and thank Him for things that He's done for us, right? To thank Him for Jesus, just to draw close to Him. But another thing that we do when we meet for Bible studies, in youth group and other stuff like that is we get together and we get to motivate each other to do awesome things to show people God's love, right? Like when we meet together as a group and sometimes we're like, okay, we need to do a service project or there's this need going on and we need to go over and help do that, right? Like that's us getting together to motivate one another to do love and good works. And that's one of the marks we talked about of being a good friend, right? Someone that pushes you to do something that is good, that you know you need to do, that maybe you're too scared to do on your own. Or maybe it's getting together with friends that work together to tackle a task that is way bigger than you could do by yourself, right? That's one of the best ways to be a good friend is to build other people up, to challenge them to do good things, right? To motivate them to do good things and works of love, to show Jesus' love and kindness. That's one of the things we're supposed to do as Christians for each other. The next verse comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 4. And says, He comforts us, talking about God, He comforts us all in our troubles so that we can comfort others. When they are troubled, we will be able to give them the same comfort God has given us, right? Remember we talked about how the week where we talked about everything happens for a reason. Everything doesn't happen because God wills it to happen or He says, I want this bad thing to happen to this person to teach them a lesson. No. Remember, there's sin in the world, and that sin has brought disease, and other people's choices and our own choices all swirl together to make things happen that God never wanted or intended. But in those times, He comes and comforts us, right? Think about like a little kid that like falls off their bike pretty hard and it hurts, right? A good parent is going to come in and swoop them up and take care of them and make sure everything's okay, right? And then, like, think about it. That little kid gets a little older and they have a little sibling and they see their little sibling fall off the bike. They know what's going to happen, right? Like, they're like, you're going to live. Because at first, I think little kids maybe think they're not going to live when they fall off their bike for the first time, right? Like, they just think it's the end of the world, right? But then that older sibling can come in and say, no, I've been through this before. Like, it hurts, it stinks, but it's going to be okay. Like, you're going to make it through this, right? And that's kind of the same thing here, right? Knowing that we learn from God that He comforts us, that He loves us, and that He doesn't give up on us, that there's tough stuff that goes on in the world, but that doesn't change how He feels about us or how He loves us. And when we get to share that news with other people that, yes, they can make it through, yes, God still cares about you, and He did not cause this, and that you can move past this, and that even you can use your story to tell people about God's faithfulness, that they can make it through, that's an amazing thing. So that's what a good friend does, right? A good friend doesn't run away when times get hard. They stick with you and encourage you and build you up and are there for you to help you out. Jesus did it for us. We're called to do it for others. And the last verse is probably my favorite verse. Before I became a Christian, I feel like I was an incredibly selfish person, just worrying about what I wanted, right? And when I started reading the Bible, this verse hit me upside the head like a 2x4. It was, it was serious. So this is from Philippians chapter 2, and it's verses 3 and 4. And it says, don't be selfish. That's just a good enough right there, right? Like if it's just stopped there. But he unpacks it a little more. He says, don't try and impress others, right? Because when you're trying to impress people, you're being selfish because you want attention. You want people to think that you're amazing, right? And it's not about us being amazing, right? Like God loves us. And if that's our baseline, if we know that our identity comes in God because he loves us, because of what he did with Jesus, did for us through Jesus, right? Like there's no need to try and impress other people. Like we know we're loved. We know that someone thinks we're amazing enough to die for, right? So needing to impress other people falls way down the list, right? And then it doesn't matter. You guys see it a ton in school. It happens in the adult world too. People go to meetings and they want to look like they're the smartest person in the room, or they want to take charge, or they dress so people like pay attention to them still. Like it happens all throughout life. It's crazy, right? Don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others, right? And he goes on to say, be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves, right? Think of other people as better than yourselves. That was really hard for me, right? Because a lot of us like to think, well, we have it all together. We know all the answers. We're the best. At least we're not as bad as those people, right? Man, trash truck going crazy today. Anyway, so be humble, think of others as better than yourselves. And finally, he ends it with this. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too, right? Don't just be interested in about what you're doing, but a good friend asks questions, actually cares about what you're going through, right? So they ask questions, they want to know stuff. So ask questions of people, figure out what they're doing, what they're into, and ask more questions about it so you actually get to know who they are. You get to understand what they like, what they care about, what they're passionate about, right? That's what a good friend does, and that's what God calls us to be to our close friends and to other people, right? Because if we act like that, if we're not selfish, if we take interest in what other people do, if we try and motivate them to do something good, if we help comfort them when they're having trouble, there are people that are, not our close friends, but they're going to get to know Jesus through that. So remember, we can be a good friend. God, knowing who God is and how he has a relationship with us, can transform every other relationship we have. Love you guys. Have an awesome week.